Hello, welcome to Jennifer's Magical Club. Today I am here to read a novel which is called The Cricket in Times Square. I'm going to continue reading from chapter 6. So I'm going to start. Sai Fong. Mario took the IRT local subway downtown. He held the matchbox up at the level of his chest so that the cricket could see out. This was the first time Chester had been able to watch where he was going on the subway. The last time he had been buried under roast beef sandwiches. He hung out of the box, gazing up and down the curve. Chester was a curious cricket, and as long as he was here in New York, he meant to see as much as he could. He was staring at an old lady wearing a straw hat, wondering if the flowers on it were real, and if they were what they would taste like. When the train lurched to a halt, like most people who first ride the subway, Chester wasn't used to the abrupt stops. He toppled out of the matchbox into Mario's lap. The boy picked him up again. "You've got to be careful," he said, putting his finger over the open end of the box so there was just enough room for Chester to poke his head out. At the Canal Street stop, Mario got off and walked over several blocks to Chinatown. Chester craned his head out as far as he could to get his first look at New York by the day. The buildings in this part of town weren't nearly as high as they were in Times Square, but they were still high enough to make Chester Cricket seem very small. In Chinatown, as Papa had said, all the shops were closed. Mario walked up and down the narrow, curving street, zigzagging across them so he could look in the windows on both sides. In some, he saw the cardboard shells that up into beautiful paper flowers if you put them in a glass of water, and in others, the glass wind herbs that twinkle when they were hung in the window where the breeze can reach them. But he couldn't find a cricket cage anywhere. Down at the end of an alley, there was an especially old shop. The paint were peeling off the doors and the windows were crammed with years and years collections of knickknacks. A sign hanging out in front said Sai Fong Chinese Novelties, and printed underneath in small letters was also Do Hand Laundry. Sitting cross-legged on the doorstep was an old Chinese man. He was wearing a silk vest on his shirt with dragons embroidered on it in red thread, and he was smoking a long white clay pipe. Mario stopped and looked in the shop window. The old Chinese man didn't turn his head, but he looked sleepily at the boy out of the corner of his eye. Slowly, he drew the pipe out of his mouth and blew a puff of smoke into the air. "Are you Mr. Fong?" asked Mario. The man smoothly twisted his head, and as if it were on a pivot, and looked at Mario. "I, Sai Fong," he answered. His voice sounded strange, yet musical, like a plucked violin. Sai Fong had come from China many years ago, and he had a curious way of talking. But Mario liked it very much. He enjoyed the individual chirps of human beings almost as much as those of his cricket. "I would like to buy a cricket cage if you have any," said Mario. Sai Fong put the pipe back in his mouth and took a few puffs. His eyes became even narrower than they had been before. "You got cricket?" he asked finally in a voice so soft that Mario could hardly hear it. "Yes," said Mario, "here he is." He opened the matchbox. Chester and Sai Fong looked at each other. Oh, very good, said Saifang, and a remarkable change came from him. He suddenly became very lively, almost dancing a jig on the sidewalk. You got cricket, very good. He was laughing delightedly. Muriel was startled by Saifang's quick change. I want to buy him a house, he said. Come in shop, please, said Saifang. He opened the door and they both went in. Muriel had never seen such a cluttered room. It was a jumble of Chinese odd ends. Everything from silk ropes to chopsticks to packages of hand laundry littered the shelves and chairs. There was a faint, sweet smell of incense in the air. Saifang brushed a pile of Chinese newspaper to the floor. You seat, please, he said, motioning Mario to the chair he had cleared. I back soon, and he disappeared through a door at the back of the shop. Mario sat very quietly. He was afraid that if he moved, he would be buried under an avalanche of Chinese novelties. In a glass case right in front of him was a row of Chinese goddesses curved with ivory. They all had the strangest smile on their lips, as if they knew something nobody else did. And they seemed to be staring straight at Mario. He tried to look at them, but he couldn't keep it up and had to look away. In a few minutes, Saifang came back into the room. He was carrying a cricket cage in the shape of a pagoda. There were 7 tiers to it, each one a little smaller than the one below, and it ends in a slender spire. The lower parts of the cage were painted red and green, but the spire was golden. At one side was a gate with tiny latch on it. Mario wanted to own the cage so much that he tingled all over, but it looked awfully expensive. Saifang held up the first finger of his right hand and said solemnly, This very ancient cricket cage. Once Cricket, who belonged to Emperor of all China, lived in this cage. You know story for first cricket? No, sir, said Mario. Very good, said Saifang. I tell. He set the cage down and took the clay pipe out of his pocket. When it was lit and a thread of smoke was curling up from the bowl, he used the pipe to emphasize what he said, drawing little designs like Chinese writing in the air. Long ago, in begin of time were no crickets. I'm going to read till page 42 and continue back from page 44 next time. I hope you're enjoying with me and have a nice day. Bye. See you later.